And welcome back to another episode of Cafe Lily with your hosts, Rosa and Kelsey. Kelsey and Rosa.
Hello, Rosa. It's good to see you. It's been a very long time since we've done one of these. How have you been?
Oh, I've been good. I've been doing alright. How about you?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I've been alright as well. Or I was until a couple of days ago when the Cafe Lily whiteboard fell down.
Oh yeah, I told you not to tell T owner.
I'm gonna get fired from podcast. I feel very lost without it. I feel like I don't know what to do if I don't have it written up on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
But I guess that's alright for today because we're covering one of the big ones.
Oh, and what could that be?
Today we are talking about Puella Magi, Madoka, Magica.
A classic, some will say.
Yes, some might even say it's a modern classic of Yuri.
Really now? We're going to have to explain that today. Because there are some naysayers.
Yeah, well, we're both Magical Girl fans here, and I think this show's position in the Magical Girl genre is a little bit contentious, I guess. So, you start, Rosa. What is your stance on Madoka as a Magical Girl fan and as a Yuri fan?
On surface level, it is very much an intentional antithesis to the general genre, where it's a lot more negative, where becoming a magical girl doesn't really empowers you, but causes more suffering. And I can see how that's contentious, because like, hey, magic girls are supposed to make you happy, and I guess that's just like a different kind of exploration. From what I'm aware of, it's like not one of the first to do that, but it's one of those that made a recent impact.
Yes, it's not the first depressing Magical Girl show. It's not the first Magical Girl show targeted at an adult audience either, but it's probably the biggest, question mark?
It's definitely made people think a lot more about magical girls, or at least like wonder like thoughts about like the genre being aimed differently.
Yeah, well, it's made some people want to think more about it, and it's made some people say that Madoka is the only magical girl show worth watching, and the rest of the genre is pointless fluff.
Right. Like, it's not really something that criticizes the genre, and more or less it's just like, this magic girl system is a lot more different, and is intentionally like attacking these girls.
Yeah, this is just sort of one magical girl story, which is more depressing than most, and I think there's room for that. I think that it's alright to try and explore that. Whether that's successful or not is a different question, but
yeah,
that's what we're here to see.
And we're also in like a post-Gen Obuchi's watch hard catch world, so
yeah, I mean, he'll just say anything in interviews, so
right. Is he a good writer? I don't know. I can't really say, but I really did got hooked on Madoka the second time around.
I mean, he's a guy who's watched a lot of Kamen Rider, and all I can say is, me too, man. So what I think we can do is do an episode-by-episode recap of the series, and then stop on specific Yuri moments to discuss those in detail. Do you think that sounds good?
I'll try my best, but I have a memory of a goldfish, except when it comes to Yuri.
Luckily, I've been taking notes.
Don't tag me. Don't antagonize me like that.
Sorry.
I have bullet points. It's like, okay, major moments.
I'm sure you've got notes about like the important Yuri moments, and that's what's critical here.
Oh, exactly.
Spoiler warning from here on out, we are going to cover the entire original series, and then also Rebellion, the third movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're listening from here on out, you're okay with spoilers.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's begin with the first episode, which starts with Madoka witnessing something terrible. It's the end of the world, and a giant monster is attacking, but one girl is trying to defeat it.
But it seems like she can't beat it.
Yeah, or at least she can't do it alone, because at that moment, a little white cat-like creature appears and says, you know, you could help her.
Really?
All you have to do is make a contract and become a magical girl.
Wow, that sounds like every girl's dream.
Yes, and that's just what it was. It was only a dream.
It was only a dream.
This is Madoka from Madoka Magica. She's the one with the pink pigtails. And we see a little bit of her home life. She lives with her mother, father, little brother. They appear to be quite a wealthy family. They live in a really big house.
Right. I feel like a lot of people are like wealthy in anime because you go to their house and it's like a master bedroom or something.
Yeah, basically she's living a very comfortable life. She doesn't really want for anything.
Yeah, she doesn't know what she wants.
And she goes to school with her best friends, Sayaka, blue hair girl, and Hitomi, green hair girl. At school, Madoka finds out, to her surprise, that the girl from her dream is transferring into her class that day.
Yeah, and she's real. The girl of her dream.
Her name is Homura.
She looks cold, serious, and yet very graceful, Madoka thinks. Everyone's asking her questions. What does she do? What is she up to? And then she asks Madoka, Madoka, I'm not feeling too well. I know you're the health officer. May you please escort me to the nurse's office? And so she leads until they reach the crossway. She looks at Madoka and asks her, do you love your life? Don't do anything to change that. I'm serious.
If you try to change your life, you'll lose everything.
Yeah, everything and everyone.
And Madoka, of course, is a little bit put off by this. She's like, okay, I have to go. So Madoka and Homura are, of course, a very iconic Yuri pairing of this series. You might know them even if you haven't seen the show. But how are they so iconic if they're clearly getting off on the wrong foot here?
Right? Like, look at him. It's like, Homura's like a bit of a freak. If you, like, someone comes up to you, says that, you'll be like, ah, that person's a bit of a freak, huh?
Just a little bit.
Though Madoka is such a generous person that she looks into the good for everyone.
Yes, of course. Right, so after school, Madoka goes to the shops with Sayaka, her friend from before, and she hears someone calling out and asking for help.
Help! She's trying to kill me! Again!
Not again. She follows that voice, and she finds the little white cat thing from her dream, and Homura in a magical girl outfit who's trying to kill it.
And Kyuubi's like, oh, help, help, I'm in pain. Please, someone help me. You pick your girl with pronouns. Can you help me?
And of course Madoka's gonna help, because she's a generous person like that, and she doesn't understand why Homura is trying to kill this poor defenseless creature.
This little meow meow.
And at that point, Sayaka shows up and sort of rescues Madoka from the situation. But then the two of them get lost in a witch's labyrinth.
Also, I gotta ask, did Sayaka use like a fire hydrant?
Yeah, she threw a fire extinguisher at Homura.
Yes! Ah, yes, yes. Now remember, this would be important for later.
Yes.
So, they go into the witch's labyrinth, where they are attacked by a witch.
Yes, terrifying creatures.
Yeah, very mixed media, very beautiful, artistic even.
Yes, the witch scenes from this show are very iconic as well. They were done by an external studio called Inukari, and they just look incredible.
It's super amazing to look at.
Yeah, and you're super into mixed media as well, so I can see how this is definitely right up your alley.
Oh, absolutely. It's not the first Shaft show to do something like that. Hidamari Sketch had the same artist on that. It uses, like, occasionally live photos of objects in place of, like, the environment. So you just see, like, a real life statue there, and then, like, a statue of, like, a character. And then occasionally they just mess around with the color coordination. But yeah, here in Madoka, it's absolutely brought up to like 100.
Yes, and it makes the Witch's Labyrinths seem even more terrifying because they're so different from the usual art style.
And it's so otherworldly.
Yes. Madoka and Sayaka have no hope of escape from the Witch's Labyrinth, but then they're rescued by Mami, another magical girl who also happens to go to their school. She's in the year above them, I think.
Yeah, she's like their senior.
And Mami saves them, and she tells Homura to shove off, which she does. And the little cat wakes up.
Like, Mammy, oh, thank goodness you're here. And it's like, yo, you thought that was cool, Madoka? Would you like to be like that?
Yes, this is Kyubey, and he says that he wants Madoka and Sayaka to make a contract with him and become magical girls. And that's where episode 1 ends. So nothing much really happens in episode 2, actually.
But we get a bit of explanation on, like, what Mammy is doing and wondering what's Homura's deal.
Yeah, most of it is spent sort of establishing the status quo and establishing the magical girl system for this show, which is that the girls make a contract with Kyubey, which means he will grant them a wish. And in return for this, a soul gem is created, which is their transformation item, and they are turned into magical girls and have to fight scary monsters, which are called witches. Now, I just want to pause here. Being granted a wish in return for making a contract, does that sound familiar to you at all?
No. Or I can't seem to put my finger on it.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe my memory about that is missing or something, but that just seems so familiar.
Right? Super familiar.
Well, anyway.
But yeah, so they make contracts. Let's get back on track. They make the contract, and when they make the contract, we get the soul gem, as we explained. Now, there's something very interesting about these soul gems.
Yes.
They can lose their glimmer.
Yes, as a magical girl uses her magic, the soul gem is depleted. And they have to restore their magic by using grief seeds, which they get from defeating witches. And that's sort of how the magical girl system works. They fight witches, they use up their magic, but then they get a grief seed which restores the magic.
It's a very difficult cycle. At this point, they are unaware of what would happen if they let it go completely dark.
Yeah, so Mami explains this, and Madoka and Sayaka decide to follow her around while she fights a witch, and they can just get an understanding of how it works.
Yeah, they're like shadowing her.
And Homura shows up again at some point and tells Madoka not to make a contract. Madoka asks Homura what she wished for, and she dodges the question, but insists that Madoka shouldn't become a magical girl.
Homura, what do you wish for? Don't become a magic girl. You're avoiding the question.
Exactly, that's exactly how it goes. Mami has her own theory about why Homura doesn't want Madoka to become a magical girl. She thinks that Homura just doesn't like having competition, which is fair and accurate.
That's true, because later on, we will see that this is the case for a lot of magic girls.
And yeah, that's really all the important points for episode 2. Like, it's mostly spent establishing all of that. So, will we move on to episode 3, the big one?
The big one. Ooh, what makes it so big? What happens? What happens?
Infamous episode. Infamous episode.
Very infamous. Super infamous.
Madoka and Sayaka are still shadowing Mami while she fights witches, but they still haven't decided if they want to become magical girls themselves, because they don't know if they have a wish that's worth putting their lives on the line for, because, as we said before, they live very comfortable lives. So they ask Mami what her wish was, and she reveals that she didn't really have an option because she almost died in a car accident, and that's when Kyubey appeared, and we don't see what her wish was, but presumably she wished to survive. Little bit duplicitous of Kyubey to show up right at that moment.
Right.
Later on, Madoka and Sayaka are walking home from school together, and they spot a grief seed that's about to hatch a witch.
A witch, you say?
Yes, so obviously they need to find Mami and tell her what's going on, but they don't have her phone number.
Yeah, they were chill with her, but not that chill. So Madoka went off to find Mami, and Sayaka stayed behind to keep an eye on it.
Yes, and that way when they join up together again, Madoka can lead Mami to Sayaka. And that's what happens. They go inside the witch labyrinth. Sayaka's in there keeping an eye on the witch and sort of staying hidden. And as Madoka is leading Mami through the labyrinth, she says, I've thought about it, and I think I don't really need a wish. I want to help people and do good, but I'm not good at anything. I don't have any talents, and I think that if I were to become a magical girl, that could be the way that I help people, and that would be enough for me.
It's very thoughtful of Madoka, but it causes Mami to break down.
Yeah, she doesn't like that at all. She says, it's not a walk in the park being a magical girl. It's serious, and it takes up all your time, so you won't have time for friends. And Madoka says, Mommy, what are you talking about? We're your friends.
And it helps add results to Mami motivations.
Yeah, she's like crying, she's holding Madoka's hand. She's so happy, she's over the moon.
And in the distance, you could hear Homura like screaming and yelling.
Yeah, actually, let's pause here. Do you think in another timeline, Madoka and Mami could have worked together?
They could have something going on. They could have. But like, Mami has so many issues.
Yeah.
That maybe a relationship is not what she's looking for at the moment. Maybe she needs like some sort of like animal to like comfort her.
Yeah, maybe she just needs a pet.
Yeah, an emotional support pet.
Okay, I like that vision for her.
Yeah, that's what she needs first. Also, like, Mami like fought Homura for a bit. Like, Homura showed up, and then it gets tied up.
Yeah, Homura showed up and was like, yeah, don't fight this witch, let me take this one. I don't think this is good for you. And Mami's like, no, don't talk to me, and ties her up and leaves her tied up. And then Mami fights the witch, and she's fighting it, and she dies. She gets her head bitten off.
She sees them. She's like fighting with grace and resolve. But then, yeah, unfortunately.
Yes. With Mami gone, the witch turns its eyes to Madoka and Sayaka. And Kyubey says, hurry, you have to make contracts with me right now, or you won't survive this.
And before they could say anything, Homura comes. And so Homura took out the witch with no issue at all, showing off her mysterious powers.
Yeah, she seems to have teleportation powers. At this stage, we're not sure. But she saves the day. She rescues Madoka and Sayaka from the witch, and that's the end of it. Mami's gone, and Homura says, see? This is what happens when you become a magical girl. I told you not to get involved in this, and look what happened.
And they were like left crying, and Sayaka's like, you're so cold! What is wrong with you?
I love how much Sayaka and Homura hate each other.
God, yeah. It's such a constant throughout the series. But yeah, they just do not get along, and there's something about a boy.
Oh yes, the boy was introduced in this episode, but he doesn't matter. He's not relevant. Well, that's the end of episode 3.
Yeah, there was very tragic of like what happened to Mami. She lived within her depression, holding a farce, trying to stay strong for others, believing this is what she must do as repayment for her life. And she perished.
Yeah, just as she finally found joy and comfort in others, it couldn't last. Yeah, episode 4. Sayaka and Madoka decide that they're not going to become magical girls after all, after what they've witnessed, which is understandable.
They're in grieving.
Yeah. But Sayaka very quickly changes her tune. You see, Sayaka has a friend boy who is in the hospital.
Also, mysterious accident.
Yeah, he was in an accident. He was a violin prodigy before the accident, but he has now lost use of his hand, and he is miserable about this, and Sayaka decides she's going to wish for him to regain use of his hand.
Yeah, especially after, like, his constant rants.
Yeah, he's really mean to her, which is like, okay, he's going through some stuff, but come on, man. Well, Sayaka has become a magical girl, and Madoka is unaware of this for the moment because she's walking home. And she runs into Hitomi,
who is walking home. Well, not home, she's walking somewhere, and that somewhere is a warehouse full of people ready to, well, end it all.
They are under the spell of a witch.
And Madoka is horrifying. She's doing the best she can to like try and stop it. And she's finding herself within the witch's labyrinth, the witch's curse, until she is saved by Sayaka.
Yep, Sayaka comes in, save the day as a brand new magical girl, and she's so pumped up. She's like, yeah, I'm a magical girl now. Isn't this great? And Madoka's like, no, it's not great. This isn't going to end well.
Yeah. And Sayaka's like, I fight for justice. That's why I'm doing this.
Yep, and Homoda's pretty annoyed about this as well. And just before the end of the episode, there's a little scene introducing the fifth main character, Kyoko.
She heard Mammy kick the bucket, so she decided to come in on her turf and take over.
Yeah, and Kyubei had apparently promised Kyoko that she could have this city as her territory. But now she's like, whoops, sorry, some other girl just made a contract, you got here too late. And Kyoko's really annoyed.
Yeah, Kyoko's really annoyed, and then she goes down there, and it's gonna be life-changing for her.
She's like, ooh, I'm gonna find this girl and I'm gonna beat her up.
Yeah. Episode 5. Sayaka's like, I have no regrets.
Sayaka also says that Madoka shouldn't feel guilty about not becoming a magical girl because this was like her personal decision, and Madoka doesn't have to feel like she's in the wrong. Sayaka also very quickly changes her tune on this, but we'll get to that later. There's a little scene with Madoka and Homura together.
Oh, right. She said, like, Madoka's asking her to look after Sayaka.
Yeah, Madoka approaches Homura and says, please, I'm so worried about Sayaka because I fear she's going to meet the same end as Mami. Can you please look out for her? And Homura says, I'm sorry. Actually, she's not that apologetic about it. She says, tough luck. There's nothing I can do. Give up on Sayaka.
In her mind, I'm so sorry, Madoka, to make you cry, babe, but it's going to happen one way or another.
Yeah, so she says, give up on Sayaka and also don't become a magical girl. So, back to Sayaka's adventure.
So Sayaka points to a little witchling, one of those creatures. It's not a witch yet, but it can turn into one. So she chases it down, only to be stopped by Kyoko.
Yes.
Now it's her and Kyoko like facing off against each other, fighting against ideas. Kyoko tells her, if you just kill it, you get nothing, no grief seed. So you gotta let them kill a bit to become a witch. And Sayaka's like, that's immoral. And Kyoko's like, and
they can't get along. Their ideals are too different. So Kyoko is here to make good on her promise of beating Sayaka up. And they're fighting, Kyoko's getting her, but Sayaka surprisingly is holding her own. And Madoka is horrified. She says, Kyubei, please stop them from fighting. Magical girls shouldn't fight each other. And Kyubei says, I'm sorry, I have no power to come between them, but another magical girl could. I could make you a magical girl here and now if you want to stop them from fighting.
And Madoka's like, is that all it takes? And then immediately Homura comes out of nowhere and stops the two from fighting.
Yes, that will not be necessary.
She's like, stop fighting, you're making Madoka cry.
And that's the end of that episode.
Yeah, so I guess like, I can't stand Kyoko. How could it be Magic Girl like that?
Yeah, those two cannot stand each other. And in fact, Sayaka and Kyoko, or Kyosaya, is the second most popular Yuri pairing from this show. And it seems like they're also getting off on the wrong foot.
Right. It's a clash of ideas.
Yeah. It's continued in episode 6. Yeah, they stop the fight. And sometime later, Madoka is chatting with Kyubei, and they get on the topic that magical girls aren't really created equal. Sayaka is quite a weak magical girl, but Kyubei says, Madoka hasn't even made a contract yet, and he can already tell that she would be extremely powerful if she did.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that Kyubei is like always like, it's always just like trying to, hey, you know, if you become Magical Girl, you'll be pretty strong, you know? Look at Sayaka. She can heal fast, but she's also weak.
Yeah, the way it's presented here, I think what it's trying to imply is that Sayaka was only ever going to wish for her friend boy's toothpick arm to get better, but Madoka is a wild card. She has infinite potential. She could wish for anything.
Yeah, and It means a lot in the long run.
Yes, it does.
So Madoka wants there to be peace between Sayaka and Kyoko. And Homura is just speaking to Kyoko and talking to her about like, alright, I'm gonna need you to help me fight this witch that's coming. And Kyoko's like, how do you know about this witch? She's like, don't worry about it.
Yes, Homura says that if Kyoko helps her fight this very powerful witch, the Walpurgis Knight, that Kyoko can have this city as her territory. Homura will leave, but in return, she has to stop attacking Sayaka, and Kyoko says, okay, it's a deal. The next evening, Kyoko and Sayaka are fighting again.
They're fighting, the girls are fighting. And so, as Sakia was about to transform, Madoka runs in, takes her soul gem, and then throws it on a truck. And then Sayaka stops moving.
Yeah, she drops dead. And Homura, who was also there for some reason, takes off and tries to get it back off that truck that Madoka threw it onto. And this is where Kyubey explains that soul gems literally contain a magical girl's soul and her consciousness, and that they can only operate their bodies from within a certain radius.
Any further, and their bodies is just dead.
Yes. Kyoko did not know this, and she's furious.
They brought the soul gem back, and Sayaka had no idea what happened. Till it explain.
Yes, and everyone's quite upset about this. They think they've been turned into zombies.
Yeah, in the next episode, Sayaka's just trying to understand, like, why wasn't this told to Kyubey? No, why Kyubey didn't tell them about this? Why wasn't this explained? Why wasn't this elaborated on? Why even do this? And then Kyubey just tells Sayaka, because if we do this, then you won't die easily.
Yeah, it makes them more efficient at fighting.
More durable, feel less pain.
Madoka actually asks Homura about the soul gem thing, and Homura's like, yeah, I knew, and yeah, it's a pretty miserable fate, but that's just the fate of magical girls, so maybe you should, not become one.
This drove Sayaka into a spiral. As she was going deeper into that spiral, guess who comes in to make it worse?
Kyoko shows up and is like, hey, why don't we just hang out? So they do hang out. They go for a walk together, and Kyoko takes her to an old, dilapidated church and explains to Sayaka what her wish was.
Kyoko wished that everyone would listen to her father's sermons. But eventually, he discovered how this part was obtained, and as a result, he went mad and murdered and burned down everything. Him, his family, and only leaving Kyoko to live.
Yes, so now Kyoko is alone, without anyone. She seems to be living in the ruins of her father's church. And Kyoko sort of explains to Sayaka that they're in the same boat. They both used their wish on someone else. And she says, hey, using magic for someone else can lead you down a dark path, because you don't always know what someone else wants or whether your intentions match up with theirs. So Kyoko wants to reach out to Sayaka before she goes down a dark path.
But then Sayaka refuses because she believes that Kyoko is also just self-centered and selfish, and that is true. Kyoko chooses to just live for herself and not for anyone else's.
Yes. Sayaka says, no, actually, I'm sorry you regret your wish, but that's not me. I will never regret using magic for others. And then she gets a little bit on her high horse about Kyoko stealing food to eat, despite the fact that she is a homeless, starving orphan, so I don't know what Sayaka expected. And then Sayaka leaves. This is a very interesting scene to me because it's basically the show turning to the audience and saying, this is the parallel between Sayaka and Kyoko. Do you see it? Do you see it?
It's pretty obvious. Red and blue.
Red and blue? What? Yeah, they're great parallels of characters because they both see each other as a worse version of themselves.
To Kyoko, Sayaka embodies the fall of doing things for others, and Sayaka see Kyoko as like the thought of like someone living only for themselves.
Exactly. Sayaka wants to be a knight in shining armor, and giving up on helping others like Kyoko has would be giving up on all of her ideals. So the fact that Kyoko has done that, Sayaka sees Kyoko as a failure. But Kyoko sees Sayaka's stubbornness as a failure because it's not going to get her anywhere. But that's also the road that Kyoko herself could have taken, and she wants to prevent that.
And unfortunately, we see Sayaka fall down a path of despair.
Yeah, poor Sayaka. When it rains, it pours, because Hitomi, her friend from school, has pulled her aside for a business meeting. And Hitomi says, hey, you know your friend boy who plays the violin? Well, I like him, and I want to tell him that I like him. But I think that you also like him.
So I'm going to give you the chance to confess.
Yes, she gives Sayaka a deadline and says, I'm going to let you get in ahead of me. If you want to shoot your shot, you have until this day at this time to do it.
She wanted to be fair, and Sayaka is just despair. Because the fact that she is not human anymore, she gave up her body and soul, she doesn't deserve to be loved, to be cared for, to be happy. And she can only find fulfillment in being a magical girl and continue fighting on.
Yeah, she cries to Madoka about this as she's sobbing and saying there's nothing she can do. And it's also tragic because, of course, Hitomi has no idea this is happening. She's not in the loop about magical girl stuff. And if she had known Sayaka was going through so much at that moment, I'm sure she wouldn't have sprung this on her. But the truth is, Sayaka is realizing that she sold her soul for this boy that doesn't actually care that much about her. She's very upset by this whole thing, so she goes out and is fighting witches, but she's fighting very recklessly. She's getting hurt, but she's numbed herself to the pain. She doesn't feel it anymore. And Kyoko, Homura, and Madoka are all very worried about her.
They're very worried about her. Anyone to be able to help her.
Yes.
In the next episode.
Yes, moving into episode 8.
Sayaka rants to Madoka, tells her she can never understand how it feels to be her, how it is to be separated from her own body, to not have that autonomy anymore, to lose everything and have to fight everything for nothing. And just Madoka couldn't help her. She didn't know what to say and leaves. And Sayaka is just so broken up about it because, like, I can't tell you how I really feel. She can't ask for help.
Yes, and she is starting to fall into despair, and her soul gem is getting more and more depleted of its magic.
Darker and darker and darker.
While this is happening, Homura and Kyoko are having their little business meeting. Walpurgis Night is on its way, which is a witch so powerful that it doesn't have to conceal itself in a labyrinth. So they're talking about what they're going to do when they team up to defeat it and the logistics. And in that moment, Kyubei shows up and is like, hey, is anyone keeping an eye on Sayaka? Because at this rate, she's going to use up all her magic. And that would be bad.
That'd be really bad.
Yeah. Kyoko doesn't understand this. She asks what happens if a magical girl uses up all her magic. And Kyubei says, oh, why don't you ask Homura, since she seems to know everything?
And then Homura's like, okay, I'll go deal with it.
Yeah, Homura tells Kyubei to skedaddle, which he does.
Skedaddle, you little shit. I'll deal with it. Cuts to next scene. Goodbye, Sayaka.
Yeah, Sayaka is going through it. And Homura has had enough.
It was always gonna end this way. And as she was about to do it, Kyoko comes in and saves Sayaka.
Yes, and Kyoko saves Sayaka's life from Homura. And Sayaka doesn't even have the energy to run away and escape. She just kind of shuffles away. And Kyoko's like, what is going on? What is wrong with you? But Homura takes off. Later on, Madoka is in the park with Kyubei and she's asking him all these questions about how she can help Sayaka. And Kyubei says, well, there is one way you can help her. You can make a wish to save her and become a magical girl yourself.
A bunch of gunshots go off.
And Kyubei explodes.
Cube is just shot several times. Cube becomes cheese.
And of course it was Homura. She shot Cube. And Madoka is horrified. How could you do that? She says.
How could you do that? It was a defenseless creature.
And Homura kind of just breaks down crying and she's sobbing in the park. This was not a good moment for Homura. This was not a good Madohomu moment. Homura is like begging on her knees for Madoka to understand, and she just goes, okay, I have to go.
Like Homura's like, please, 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 please.
She is, oh, poor Homura. It's just not gonna happen, is it?
It's not gonna happen. It's never gonna happen.
So everyone's looking for Sayaka, and Kyoko's the one who finds her in a train station.
After hearing a conversation between two scummy guys.
Some might say that that scene changed lives. Like, not mine personally, but some out there.
It definitely does.
Sayaka has used up all her magic, and she says, you know what, maybe I do regret it all. I was an idiot. And her soul gem implodes. And yes, it's true. The final stage of the magical girl life cycle is that they will become a witch.
In the next episode, they want to save Sayaka. They're going to try to save her. They're going to try to bring her back by helping her remember who she is.
Yes. Madoka, of course, is miserable about losing her friend, and she's been chatting to Kyubey and asks him why is he doing this. And Kyubey gives an explanation, and it is bad on multiple levels, but let's not go into that now.
Basically, it's just like girl hysteria simulator. That's what Cupid calls it.
Yeah, pretty much.
We powered the universe through girl hysteria simulator.
Uh-huh.
Madoka's like, that's awful.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, Kyubey. Don't be a misogynist. What he says to Madoka at the end is basically that magical girls are a form of sustainable energy for the entire universe. And because Madoka, if you remember, has so much potential, that if she were to become a magical girl, it would create so much sustainable energy that the universe would pretty much be set forever. So if she ever wants to save the entire universe, she should just ring him up and die.
So in between all this, they're trying to figure out how they can bring back Sayaka. Kyoko asks Kyubey, can we save her? And Kyubey's like, it hasn't been done before.
Yeah, who's to say if it's possible?
She grabs Madoka and heads to Sayaka's witch.
Yes, because Kyoko thinks that hearing the voice of a friend might bring Sayaka back to her senses. And, of course, it doesn't work. It goes very badly for her.
She decided that she's not going to leave Sayaka alone.
She apologizes to Sayaka. She says, I'm sorry. You're actually really lonely, aren't you? But don't worry. I'll stay with you, and you'll never be lonely again.
And they are together. Which ideas turn out better than the other? It doesn't matter. In the end, they both perish.
It's true. But this is such a beautiful culmination of their character arcs, because it's like they've been set up as parallels this entire time. So it's like by forgiving Sayaka, Kyoko is forgiving herself as well.
And deciding to take a page from Sayaka and deciding to do something selfless for someone else.
Yeah.
The music that plays, the artwork that shows is beautiful.
This is also the first time that we've seen the witch of a magical girl that we've known before. So this is the first time we get to understand that the imagery of a witch's labyrinth is based on the magical girl's mental state. So Sayaka's, of course, has a lot of musical and orchestral imagery, but it also has knight in shining armor imagery, and also the Little Mermaid.
Oh my god. Yeah, I remember seeing those fishes. It's like, God. It's so much. It really, she really is just comparing herself to the mermaid, huh?
Yeah, and Sayaka has a lot of mermaid imagery, and it's often paired with unicorn imagery. Kyoko is represented by unicorns in a lot of the visuals, and actually in extra material where we see the other girls' witches, Kyoko's witch is unicorn themed.
You know, wait, nice shiny armor, horse?
Oh, it's so real. It's all coming together.
It's all coming together. And so, as tragically, Sayaka's now gone.
And so is Kyoko. Later, Homura asks Kyubei why he gave Kyoko false hope that Sayaka could be saved, when in reality it's impossible. And Kyubei says, well, I did that on purpose actually, because now that Kyoko's gone, you're the only magical girl left who can fight Walpurgis Night. And since you can't do it alone, Madoka will have no choice but to become a magical girl in order to help you. So he's been scheming.
Kyubei doesn't know everything going on with Homura, but they know how to make her slip.
Yes.
Very fascinating, very interesting. Clever little Kyubei. So, what we're gonna learn next episode?
Episode 10? This was another critical event.
Yes. We learn how Homura became Homura.
Yes, this episode is dedicated entirely to her backstory and her wish.
She was just a sickly girl. Glasses, pigtails. She recently got better enough to go back to school.
Yes, and when we see her, it's sort of a redo of episode 1 and the scene where she transfers into Madoka's school. But this is a very different Homura than the one we're used to, obviously.
She doesn't make the best first impressions. She's very nervous and reserved and shy. And she had a lot of trouble making friends. And by the end of the school day, she's just going home on her own. Sad and depressed, thinking she can't really amount to much and do much to make friends.
Yes, she's getting so in her head about this. She's thinking, I'm no good. I'll never be any good. I might as well just die. And then she stops and she's like, wait, no, I wouldn't go that far. And she looks around and she's trapped in a witch's labyrinth. What's going on?
Definitely she was hunted by a witch. Until she was saved by Mami and Madoka.
Yes, Madoka is a magical girl in this timeline. And she's really playful about it too. She's like, oh, don't tell anyone at school.
She just recently became a magical girl at this point too. About a week earlier.
Homura goes to have post-battle snacks with Madoka and Mami. And she's getting to be good friends with them. And Mami explains that she and Madoka both have to train because Walpurgis Night is coming soon. And they're going to have to be able to defeat it. And then it cuts to like a month and a half later. And Mami has died.
And all there left is Madoka.
Yes, and she's going to try and defeat Walpurgis Night on her own. But she fails and she also dies. And Homura is heartbroken. But then Kyubei appears and says, well, you can change her fate. You can make a wish and become a magical girl. So she makes her wish. I want to go back in time to before I met Madoka and become someone who protects her.
She goes back and she goes to class and she sees Madoka. And she's like, I'm so happy to see you. And it shows out that she's also a magical girl. So they work together, train together, and it seems like Homura's getting the hang of it. She's getting better and better being a magic girl, and then it's that fateful day again, and they failed.
So once again, she goes back. Because her wish hasn't been fulfilled, she has to go back in time as someone who protects Madoka.
Because on each timeline they fail over and over and over again.
Yes, it goes on.
And she's seen Madoka die so many times, and she decided to fulfill one of Madoka's wish: stop me from becoming a magical girl.
Yes, in one of Homura's loops, that's what Madoka asks of her. Please go back in time and stop me from becoming a magical girl. And Homura promises. This episode was key to the Madohomo Yuri. Lives were changed.
Lives were changed. It was so tragic. This girl saw her die so many times. She decided, that's it. And it's like a huge role reversal between the two. Like Madoka originally was the one protecting Homura, and Homura looked up to her, so loving towards her, and Madoka became her world because she became everything to Homura. She was her reason for living, for going back in time. She tried so hard to make sure Madoka lived. She told everyone what was going to happen, and even then, it didn't work. There was still conflict with Sayaka, who was like, yeah, I don't believe you.
Yeah, typical Typical for Homura and Sayaka's inability to get along for 5 seconds to mess up however many loops. So that's episode 10. Good God.
Yeah. So we saw how Homura became Homura, how she decided to be more isolated, decided not to care to help others because it just made it harder for her to save Madoka. She turned Madoka into her, into the Homura that once was, into someone who doesn't have any value towards herself, someone who doesn't know how they can help others.
Yeah, she starts off in that first loop as a more sort of pink pretty cure type character.
Right, she was the traditional pink magical girl lead. But then that all changes, that all was altered.
Yes, episode 11. I don't know, there's not a whole lot to talk about in this one.
Yeah, Kibe explained to us, like, because of Homura's time resets, it creates these loops, these strings that tie to Madoka, allowing her to have the potential of becoming a magical girl. Because she was always going to be fated to be a magical girl no matter what. And it's just going to make her more powerful as one.
Yes, Homura has basically changed the whole universe so that it revolves around Madoka because of all her time resets. And yeah, good going, Homura, is basically what Kyubey shows up to say.
Like, great job, Homura! You gave us some amazing field source! Why did we think of this sooner?
She's not happy about that. But she doesn't have too much time to think about it because Walpurgis Night arrives.
Oh, fuck. The witch. The witch is here.
Yep, and because majority of people can't see witches, it just looks like a natural disaster, like a hurricane or something, but Madoka knows.
Madoka knows.
She knows Homura's out there fighting, and she's out there losing.
Yeah, she's losing. And Madoka's like, what am I going to do? What should I do? And Kiba's like, well, you know what to do, Madoka. All it takes is that wish. And Madoka's like, then I know what I have to do. Oh yeah, we also forgot to mention that there was like, Madoka's mom and the teacher were having like a night at a bar.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Madoka's mother up until now, but she's a really good character.
Yeah, she's a very, of course, obviously mothering figure, but she's always there to give Madoka some advice and insight on like what it means to help others.
Yeah, a lot of Madoka's decisions are informed by discussions she has with her parents.
Yeah.
So Madoka leaves the shelter and she goes out to find Homura, who has been crushed by a falling rock or something.
Homura sits there in her despair. She was about to give in to her despair and slowly become a witch herself. But then Madoka comes.
Yes. Episode 12, final episode, is where she finally makes her wish. And Homura is begging her not to. She's like, in tears.
Don't do it!
But Madoka apologizes, and then she forms a contract with Kyubey, making her wish to erase all witches, past, present, and future, before they're even born.
She takes away all the despair, all the witches that were going to become a reality. She destroys, she defeats, allowing magical girls from everywhere around the world, from different time periods to, well, die in peace.
Yeah, it shows a bunch of magical girls. It's quite a sequence. You were really tickled by one scene in particular that shows Joan of Arc was a magical girl. You had a real reaction to that.
Yeah, like Joan of Arc and Cleo. I hope Cleo likes the grief scene that got her. It always goes back to Club High. But yeah, whenever magical girl falls in battle, they now no longer have to turn into a witch and they can pass on in peace. It's very tragic and yet at the very least comforting for them to know that their soul can go on living without being corrupted.
Yes.
They can pass without being corrupted.
But Madoka's wish was so powerful that the universe now has to reform to suit the new laws that she's brought into existence. So Madoka will no longer be a person anymore. Nobody will remember her. She'll just exist as the law of cycles, which is a force that destroys witches before they're born. And Homaru's so upset about this.
She so sad that she would never get to see Madoka again. It's tragic. She's so sad. She doesn't want to lose her, but unfortunately that's the fate Madoka chosen, and Homura's going to have to accept that.
Yes, but Madoka appears and says, now that I'm all-powerful, and now that I'm basically God, I can see all those time loops you did. And I'm sorry I never realized how much you did for me. And she holds Homura's hands, and she says, you are my best friend. And the sound of Homura's heart breaking into a million pieces echoes through... No, I'm kidding. It's a nice scene.
It's a very nice scene. Madoka ultimately appreciates all the work. Madoka tells Homura, it's okay, you can take it easy now. No worries anymore. Homura's like, I will never get to see you again. No one can. Can you really said that? And Madoka's like, I will never be gone. I'll be here and there and everywhere.
Yes, and that's when she gives Homura the red ribbons that she wears in her hair as a parting gift. And then the world is reformed, and there's a new timeline. And Homura and Mami and Kyoko are a magical girl team together.
Unfortunately, Sayaka, because of the loss of the universe, because of her wish, Sayaka passes on.
Yes, unfortunately, she doesn't get to stay. But in this new world, they don't fight witches anymore. But there are still magical girls, and they have to fight other monsters.
Mm-hmm. They're called the Wraiths.
And when they use up all their magic, they just disappear. They don't become witches anymore. And nobody remembers Madoka, except for Homura. She can't forget about her. And Homura's just chatting to Kyubei, and she's like, yeah, I'm from another timeline, and there was this whole different system of witches, and there's this girl called Madoka, and she's like God. Isn't that interesting? And Kyubei goes, yeah, that is pretty interesting.
She's writing this on a clipboard and tells her, okay.
And then Homura gives a big old speech about how she's never going to forget Madoka as long as she lives because she knows Madoka's watching over her, and that's the end of the show.
And she continues fighting.
Well, that's the end of the series. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the Yuri up to this point?
It's very interesting because, of course, this is a series most notable for the relationship between Homura and Madoka, and obviously, yeah, you can frame it as Homura having a romantic obsession with Madoka, and that's absolutely, true. There's no other way to put it.
Yes, I think Homura's obsession, you put it perfectly, with Madoka is, I think it has an angle of toxic Yuri. Even before we get into the movie, which we are going to talk about, I think that even without that, there's a case you could make that this is toxic Yuri.
It is. And someone say, because, Homura's doing this to help Madoka, and it's you're right, but at the same time, Homura's also had to change Madoka's existence herself. Even before all that, she inadvertently just changed who Madoka was as a person.
Yes, she had to reshape her world so that she can be the one who protects Madoka, and I think that's why it's so interesting that she now exists in a post-Madoka world, because I don't think she can cope with that. I don't think that she can deal with her life and her existence not revolving around protecting Madoka. And that idea of Homura's inability to let go so perfectly leads into the movie.
Clearly, Madoka became an idea for Homura, and it gets emphasized more in the movie. But I also want to mention Kyoko and Sayaka, they're Yuri together.
Yes, I feel like when I first mentioned that Kyosaya is a really standout Yuri, you didn't believe me because you hadn't seen the show in a very long time.
Yeah, I haven't seen them much. Oh yeah, they're just the other pair. And then I watch it and then I understand, they're the obvious ideological rivalry, of course, is there. But also it's a tragedy of two people, two learns to understand each other, but unfortunately in a state where it was too far gone for them to reconcile.
Yeah, if you're gonna rewatch this show, definitely keep an eye out for Kyosaya, because it does get overshadowed a little bit by Madohomu in the Yuri discussion, but it's just as good, if not better, at times.
It's absolutely, I would say, it's they're both very important to each other, to their dynamics, because I think to understand the differences in their dynamics, it's to understand the characters a whole lot better.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I saw discussions of like if Madoka Homura is toxic Yuri, and all I can say is the answer is within rebellion.
Yes, in the movie. This movie came out 2 years after the TV series. There were 2 other movies, but they were just like the TV show again. Like they did the show as movies.
Yeah, which is it's done before for a few animes where like they made like movie versions, and I guess this role is done to help recap like the series for like this movie. But then again, that's just me guessing.
Yes, but this movie is the first original story, and oh, we gotta get into it.
Yeah, so it starts out with Madoka and Mami off on another adventure, fighting against witches, as it seems, only for Madoka to wake up again, just like she did in the original series.
Yes, but she wasn't in a dream this time. She actually is a magical girl.
Yep. She is. Her, Mami, Kyoko, Sayaka are a magical girl team, and they fight against the nightmares.
Yes. But a transfer student is coming to their school today. And what do you know? She's already a magical girl.
And who is this magical girl?
It's Homura, our friend Homura.
Our friend Homura, and she looks like she did back then. Interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of like a perfect world situation, because
Yeah.
all the 5 characters are alive. They're all working together as a magical girl team. Kyoko is friends with them. She's even going to their school, which she didn't in the original series.
It seems like... it seems like Hitomi and... what was that boy's name? The boy got together. Interesting. And it seems like Kyoko and Sayaka are hitting it off well. They seem to get along a lot. Even with their bickering, it seems like they're just having fun doing that. And Madoka's like, gay people. It's very heartfelt getting to see them again, but like in a happier state. Kyoko and Sayaka really do just hit it off well. We get to suddenly see them just together, alive, happy.
Yeah, and it's great to see. And because they are all magical girls, they form a magical girl team together called the Puella Magi Holy Quintet.
When they had recruited Homura, they went off to fight their nightmare as the quintets with their new companion, Baby, who is practically Mami's emotional support pet.
Yes, Mami is keeping the witch that killed her in the main series as a pet.
It's like that image, like there's this image of like a giant rat where a person say, "Hey, I'm sorry I tried to kill you, giant rat. You're cool. We're friends now." That's actually Mami and Baby, and Baby is practically like their fairy. It's like their fairy.
Yeah, and she's always talking about cheese. She loves cheese, which, you know, good for her. You always need a cheese mutual. And they're working together as a team to fight nightmares, and it's going so well. They're having so much fun, and Mami sort of chastises them. She's like, you know, fighting nightmares isn't supposed to be fun, but they're just really happy together. And it's a perfect world.
So yeah, it's so perfect that Cube doesn't say anything at all.
Yes. And Homura very quickly realizes that this isn't right. It's too perfect. Something's going on here.
Like, in this world, like, everything, their group is just, like, regular magical girls. Transformation sequences and everything. Very, group attack. Team attack. It's very typical. It's very upbeat.
Yeah, they even defeat the nightmare by singing a song at it. So
Yeah, and and saving their friend with no losses or death.
Yeah, so this isn't right, and Kyoko knows it's not right. So she has a little business meeting, once again, with Kyoko. I love her business meetings with Kyoko.
Yeah.
And they talk about it. And she's like, so, what's going on here? And she asks all these questions to try and get some details. And Kyoko says, well, before I lived here, I lived in another city. And Homura says, right, okay, this is our first lead. Take me to the other city that you used to live in. And they get on the bus.
So they go on like a pretty fancy bus.
Yeah, and they try to get to the other city, but the bus keeps looping back around before it gets to the other city. And they're like, okay, we'll go there on foot. And they realize they can't seem to make it there on foot either. They seem to be trapped in some sort of enclosure. And Homura thinks about this and she realizes it's not just any enclosure, it's a witch's labyrinth that they are trapped in.
With that on their mind, Homura decides to go to her next lead. She visits Mami in Madoka. She starts asking Mami about Baby. Stops time, grabs Baby, takes her out, holds a shotgun to her head. Alright.
Yes, because if they're in a witch's labyrinth, then obviously the prime suspect is the witch that is present, right?
But like, Baby just has no idea what's going on. It's like, huh? What are you doing? I don't understand.
And then Mami shows up and is like, hey, what are you doing? Stop trying to kill Bebe. And Mami tries to kill Homura in return.
Right. Mami was able to negate Homura's time stop by tying one of her ribbons to her.
Yeah, Mami, she gets a zinger in on Homura. She's like, your weakness is that you always assume you're in a superior position to your opponent, and that is your downfall. And she is so correct.
That is so true, because Homura always, like, does things on the idea that, like, I'm better than all of you, that's why you're dead.
So they fight for a bit, and then Sayaka shows up and is like, hey, what are you doing?
We gotta talk about the fight. It is magnificent. It's just amazing how equal in strength they are in aim and everything. Homura had to, like, take a risk on one of her strategies. She grazed herself on the head, hoping that Mami would react and pull her ribbon down.
Yeah, it's a massive risk, and Homura's got like blood all down her face, and she looks super menacing.
So yeah, and that's when Sayaka comes there to save the day, the same way she saved Kyubei the first time.
Yes, with the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
And she takes Homura out of there, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie because she's talking to Homura like she's a child. She's like, okay, let's walk through this. If this is a witch's labyrinth, then this world inside it must serve the witch somehow. So whose desire does this perfect world serve? Let's go through this together. And Homura's just like, this is stupid, you're stupid. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to go and sit in a field of flowers while Madoka braids my hair.
It's really funny. Sayaka is really... It was probably super satisfying for her. She was just, like, dancing around, prancing, like, knowing... It's like she was, like, super satisfied with the fact that, like, she knows more than Homura does.
Yes, but Homura can't deal with that. She will never accept that Sayaka knows more than her.
Yeah, so it's very funny because then Sayaka just disappears to leave Homura to figure out the rest.
Yeah, and Homura's sitting in the field while Madoka braids her hair and she's crying and she's like, what do you mean this world isn't real?
She's telling Madoka about her nightmare, the way the world works. It's like, this world isn't real because I know there's a world where no one remembers you, where only I couldn't see you again. And Madoka tells her something she wants to hear. I would never do something like that. Give up seeing my friends, my family? I would never. And that's something Homura thinks Madoka would say.
That's what she wants to hear. But the gears start turning, and Homura realizes if this world serves anyone, it's going to be someone who wanted to see Madoka again. There's only one person who the witch can possibly be, and that's Homura herself.
Absolutely confirmed that she is a witch.
And then Kyubei appears.
Kyubey appears to fuck everything up. Well, I guess you figured it out, but why would you do that? We put your soul gem in a box.
Yes, they put Homura in a box. They're doing experiments on her.
Yeah, they wanted to see, like, who's been making these soul gems disappear.
Because Homura had spent so much time explaining the system of witches and Madoka destroying them to Kyubey, he got a little bit curious.
And knew that since you're a lot more aware than us, we'll use you to bait out the loss of cycles, or Madoka as you call it.
So Homura basically used up all her magic, and Madoka was supposed to come and get her before she could become a witch. But Kyubey set up a trap, and he intends to trap Madoka and, I don't know, study her in a lab or something.
To see what they can do, not only prove her existence, but see what they could do with her. In the process, it ended up capturing Kyoko, Mami, Hitomi, and her friend, and other people that Madoka knew.
And when Madoka came down to get Homura, of course, it was bad news, so she brought 2 friends with her. She brought Sayaka, of course, and she brought Bebe, whose real name, before she became a witch, is Nagisa.
Huh. They were both sent down on a mission to make sure they can hold, not only to investigate what's going on, but also to hold on to Madoka's mad powers in case something goes wrong. Which has.
It's gone very wrong.
Yeah, when Madoka went in, she lost all her memories and became the Madoka Homura wants to see. So in this, Sayaka and Bebe were playing roles, and that's why they knew more than everyone else. So that's why they had to play them in the meantime. And once Homura figured it out, that's when they made their action. Homura manifested into a witch in the enclosure, so it was up to Madoka and all her friends to help free Homura from the enclosure. So they start breaking down the ceilings as Homura refuses.
Yes, there's this big old fight scene, and it's incredible. It's very good. Everyone's working together to try and free Homura from her fate.
And you get to see Sayaka with her new powers. She's able to manifest her witch form to help in the fight. Same with Baby.
Yeah, I guess if you're besties with Madoka, you get that privilege.
Yeah.
And there's a little scene between Sayaka and Kyoko during the fight where Kyoko, it sort of hits her that this isn't real and she's not going to get to stay with Sayaka any longer.
And Sayaka apologizes to her, telling her, even though I was fine, there was one thing I regretted, and that was leaving you alone.
So they get one more moment together, which is nice.
A moment to fight alongside each other.
Yeah.
As Homura is in her depths of despair, remembering the moment she had to kill Madoka, she was hoping someone would do the same, and she wanted to take out her old self. But Madoka comes in, tells her it's okay, pulls her out, and together they shoot the arrows up above the skies and took out all the Kyubeis that were just chilling around in the area, allowing and finally breaking the enclosure.
Excellent scene. Excellent.
And now Homura lays.
Yes, and here comes Madoka to finally get her best friend.
Madoka and friends to bring her to heaven.
And it's beautiful, but it's also a trap. Because just as Madoka is about to cleanse Homura's soul gem, she grabs her and splits Madoka in 2. She splits Madoka the girl from Madoka the goddess, so that she can hold on to Madoka forever.
And it reshaped the universe.
Yes, just as Madoka did before her. She reshapes the whole universe, just so that she can live together with Madoka and never have to be apart from her again.
She looked at Kyubey as like, oh yeah, this is your second time, but you don't remember the first time, do you? He was like, how are you doing this? And Homura manifests into a devil.
During the scene where Homura is becoming devil, she grabs Kyubey at one point And he makes this pathetic little sound, and it's so funny to me because that's the only time in the entire series where he sort of makes any expression of pain or fear. It's like, oh no.
Like, Yuri knows he's not coming back from this. It's a new day. Everyone's going to school. Kyoko, Mami, and others are able to sense her, but don't see her. Sayaka still remembers.
But not for long.
Homura alters her memories.
Once again, there's a transfer student arriving at school. But this time, it isn't Homura. She's already there. It's Madoka. She's the new student. So Homura shows her around and gives her a tour of the school. And they're talking and getting to know each other. And Madoka's talking about how she hasn't been around in a while. Like, she lived overseas with her family and she came back. And she's like, oh, well, something feels different. And then she realizes, no, it's not something about here, it's something about me. I'm meant to be different from this. I'm meant to have a different form. And her eyes start glowing yellow like they do when she's in her goddess form. And Homura just grabs her shoulders and says, please, stop, just stay as you are.
You care about your status quo, right? She says... She repeats the first words she said back in the beginning of the series and gives Madoka back her ribbon and keeps her docile for now. And Homura realizes this isn't going to last forever.
If things keep up this way, one day Madoka might become her enemy. And that's where the series leaves off, with Homura as the devil and Madoka's god powers being restrained, sort of.
We're gonna see what happens next soon.
Yeah, the new movie's coming out this year, maybe? But obviously, this is a pretty big shift in Homura and Madoka's relationship. But it's one that makes complete sense, and that's what I like about it.
It was always the obvious progression of, like, what was going on with Homura, how she saw Madoka, what she wanted from Madoka. Homura stopped looking at Madoka as a person after a long time.
Yeah, her obsession only compounded. Just as Madoka was getting those strings of fate attached to her as the timelines went on and on, Homura's obsession was becoming more involved, and as the timeline went on, it was all-consuming. So of course she would do this. Of course she would reshape the entire universe just so she could live by Madoka's side.
It's just Homura refusing to accept, like, her own actions, because Madoka didn't become an idea after she became a god. She became an idea when Homura decided to keep her from becoming a magic girl.
Yeah, that's so true. That's what's so interesting about it. That's what I think makes it a very compelling toxic Yuri.
Yeah. Like, people say, oh, Homura does nothing to hurt Madoka, but, like, I mean, it's like Homura doesn't want her to have autonomy, independence. She knows she's going to have to fight Madoka the moment she stops being docile.
I think another aspect is that throughout her time loops, Homura has gotten very used to being the one holding all the cards and being in control, which I say with a little bit of sarcasm because she is not in control, clearly. Everything is going terribly for her all of the time. But she is, at the very least, in a position above Madoka. She has more knowledge than her and more power than her.
Yeah, she saw everything and thought she knew everything, and then it just didn't matter. If you knew everything and did everything, then how come you couldn't, like, save everyone? You couldn't help everyone?
Yeah, exactly. And then with Madoka becoming God at the end, that's a role reversal because you can't get more in control of things than literally being God. And I think that was too big of an upset for Homura to handle. If Madoka is in a higher position of power than her, she can't play with Madoka like a puppet on a string anymore. And she doesn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm. Homura failed her own personal goals of, like, being what Madoka was for her.
God, she's such a character. I could spend all day tumbling her like a stone in my mind.
Yeah. And she'll still be jagged because she has so many flaws, so many issues.
It's so true.
That's the appeal of Homura, and it's a lot to think about. God, it's like before I rewatched the series, the movies, and everything, I just didn't think about like how's this like the toxic Yuri, and I realized like, oh, the toxicity not within like violence or verbal abuse or anything, but within the lack of autonomy Homura gives to Madoka.
Yes.
It's like Kyoko and Sayaka are two people, are the parallels of like partners that understand each other and understands the distance they have to accept, while Homura just refuses to let Madoka be a person, to understand her, or to accept that part of her, like the way Kyoko and Sayaka do. They're such an important pair, I think it's be ridiculous to like overlook them.
Yes, do not overlook Kyosaya.
Exactly.
This is our message. This is our final message. If you're gonna rewatch Madoka, do not overlook Kyosaya.
Now remember, Kyoko is as butch as they're gonna get before Jin or Butchie gets scared.
Listen, she's butch to me.
Listen, I'm not denying that fact. I can see what you mean, but it can itself any further, Jin or Butchie is gonna get scared and screaming on the phone. Like, change it back.
I need everyone to go and look at the official art where Kyoko is dressed up like an early career Justin Bieber impersonator, and
Oh my God.
they will see my vision.
Madoka Magica is a wonderful series, and I'm glad to like rewatch it again and actually like be able to understand and engage with it properly than I did when I was like a teenager.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to appreciate on a second watch or even a third watch. So if you think that you would appreciate a magical girl show that is a little bit miserable, go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, is that all we have on Madoka for today?
Yeah.
Do you want to speed run through some of these updates?
For sure, this is like pretty quick, so.
Yes.
Pokemon update. They added Rika to Pokemon Masters, so I went back and played it, and I was able to grind out enough to get her. Thank God. That's the benefit of having an account since launch.
Congratulations on getting Rika to play with in an enclosure.
Yeah, you could literally do that. But you could literally take pictures of her.
Well, good job.
Thank you. Now, tell us about your time with Catch These Hands.
Yes, I did go and read the first volume of Catch These Hands after you recommended it, and just as you predicted, I did enjoy it.
I knew it. You love it when like a woman is dumb and does not acknowledge like a femme loving her or something.
Yeah. I mean, if you missed the previous episode, this series, Catch These Hands, is about two ex-delinquent girls who were rivals in high school, and then they meet again as adults and they start dating.
Because like one of them turns out was always in love with her and kept beating her up because that was the only way she could talk to her.
She can only communicate with her fists. Oh, it's tragic. It's
because that's the only kind of communication the other can take.
It's really funny though. I loved the chapter about social media where Tsuramori is like, I need to get more followers on Instagram or whatever, and Takabe's like, well, I don't know about that. I don't know how to use social media, which, like, same. And then Tsuramori's like, oh, you compete with other people to see who can get the most likes. And suddenly she's super interested because she loves the competition.
They're so dumb.
They're so funny. I definitely want to get the next volume of this. I don't know if it's out in English yet, but I'm going to look for it.
Me too. Now, you said you wanted to give your New Year's Yuri resolution an update.
Yes. At the time when this episode goes up, I will have a new comic on Petal and Leaf, which will be an original one-shot Yuri called The Bee and the Beetle. It's about bugs. It's Bug Girl Yuri, so check it out.
Yeah, check it out. I saw it. It's really good. Our friend Connie helped out too with listing some stuff.
Yeah, Connie helped, and Rosa helped with the character designs as well, so...
Of course, I gave my notes. It was very simple notes.
But it was very helpful. But that means that I have successfully fulfilled my new Yuri's resolution, which was to make a short, original one-shot Yuri. So, Rosa, the ball is in your court.
Ooh, mine was something about, like, dirt.
Yes, you were going to make a Yuri about a woman, and dirt was involved somehow. I forget.
The woman who smells like dirt pulling, like, a really preppy femme.
Ah, yes. Well, it's up to you now.
It's up to me now. I should start scheduling out my Yuri production.
Okay, well, I think that's all.
Of course, it has to be that, or else we're gonna go on 3 hours and we'll literally be a StarCast episode.
Oh, God help me, I cannot do a StarCast episode.
Not again.
Not again.
Alright. Thank you all for joining, and remember, if you're in the time loop,